The Pittsburgh Penguins. They'll have a new voice behind their bench for the 25-26 season. And rookie head coach Dan Muse, who comes over, former assistant with the New York Rangers, taking over from Mike Sullivan, who is now the head coach of the New York Rangers. And, he's going to have a pretty daunting task ahead of him because when I look at who the Penguins acquired during the offseason to this point, it's like looking at the Boston Bruins all over again. So I'm going to go through the names and then we'll react off of that. They add defenseman Connor Clifton from Buffalo, right wing Justin Brazeau, it's a UFA from Minnesota, Anthony Mantha, right wing UFA from Calgary, Raphael Harvey Pinard signed as a UFA from the Canadiens. Alexeyev signed as a UFA from Washington after he wasn't qualified. Matt Dumba comes over in a trade with the Dallas Stars. And maybe the most significant was Artur Silovs, goaltender acquired in a trade with the Vancouver Canucks. In terms of their re-signs, a couple of UFAs that they held on to, Connor Dewar, no jeans joke here, please, and Philip Tomasino, a center. And the most significant drop was goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic, who was traded to San Jose for a third-round pick in 2028. But the mindset here for Kyle Dubas is that you've got Sidney Crosby's 38, Kris Letang's 38, Evgeni Malkin's 39, Erik Karlsson's 35. And if you're trying to surround this aging core and add Karlsson in if you want, but if you're trying to surround them with quality pieces to make one last playoff run, I don't see it.
This is waving the white flag to me. This team is waving the white flag. They're saying we want to be in contention for a lottery pick. And why isn't Karlsson traded? They were saying at the beginning in the springtime, Karlsson's available. We're going to trade him this summer. Nothing has happened. He's still there. That might be because they didn't try or because nobody wanted him. It's going to be miserable in Pittsburgh this year. It just is. Not that it hasn't been for the last 3 years. And I pity Dan Muse, who comes in from the New York Rangers, as you said, while Mike Sullivan goes the other way from Pittsburgh to New York Rangers. As a rookie head coach, this is what he starts with. It reminds me of David Quinn getting his first opportunity with a Ranger team you knew couldn't make the playoffs. And then his next opportunity was with the San Jose Sharks team that you knew for sure was going to be a lottery pick team. And this poor guy didn't have a chance in either spot. And I don't know. I don't want to say Dan Muse has no chance because that wouldn't be fair. But he's got a tough hill to climb.
You look at this franchise and how proud they were only a few years ago, but truth is, Sidney Crosby's probably going to miss the playoffs for the fourth straight year. The team has not won a playoff series since winning the Stanley Cup against Nashville in 2017. They've got a couple of decent support parts. Ricard Rakell scored 35 goals, 35 assists last year. Bryan Russ had 31 goals. So there's a couple of pieces that are there, but simply not enough to get this team over the hump over the course of an 82-game season.
And no depth. They have no quality depth. They have Malkin on the second line. They have Anthony Mantha. I don't know what he's going to be this year. But no, they just don't have the depth to compete for a playoff spot. And I think of the teams that we've reviewed so far, this one, along with Boston, is the most glaring teams with their deficiencies.
The club also doesn't have a real deep prospect pool. They're listed in the bottom half per The Athletic, and probably one player maybe to look for is left wing Rutger McGrady, who came over to trade from Winnipeg, something that he forced the hands of the Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff to move him. But besides that, they also had $13 million in cap space. And you look at the players that they brought in, and you have to have thought somewhere along the line, maybe there was more of an upgrade in store than what we've seen.
Yeah, and you've also got to look at ownership and say that the Fenway Group bought the club from the Lemieux partners and now have it back out on the market again. And so they obviously expected better results than they've gotten so far. And maybe they were told they were in a different spot with this team than they were. A lot of people that aren't really up to speed on hockey might have thought that, well, geez, if we can get Crosby and Malkin and this Letang guy, we got to have a good team. We got Sidney Crosby, but that's not the way it works. We have not seen any reason to say that this team is improving.
And they're the oldest club in the NHL to boot.
Yeah. So
at 31 and a half years old on average. So I wanted to ask one more question, circling back to Dan Muse, because it's a new voice after close to a decade with Mike Sullivan. New approach. Is this ideal for Crosby, Malkin, and company to have a first-time NHL coach now take over at the back end of their careers where they're just hoping for one more playoff berth?
I really can't answer that. I think Sidney is a guy that will adapt and work with anybody. I think he's a quality person and high character guy and captain of his team. And I think that he'll adapt, work with anybody. But Sidney and Evgeni and Letang and Karlsson, they don't have a chance at the playoffs. And I think the unfortunate news is that Sidney's going to have to go elsewhere if he wants to make the playoffs before the end of his career. That's just factually the way it is.
We heard people starting rumors. I'm not sure if there was really anything of substance last year, but if the playoffs are out of reach in January and early February, is this something you believe could get revisited with Sidney Crosby? If you're in that GM chair, if you're in Kyle Dubas' position, would you look to trade Crosby if he wished to move on to another club to finish his career and have one more shot at the playoffs and potentially Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I would go to ownership and say Sid is asked to be moved to a team that he has a chance with. And can I look around and find out what we can do? And I definitely would, yeah, because otherwise they've got a diminishing asset, even though it's Sidney Crosby. If he retires in a Penguins jersey, they get nothing except a nice night at the beginning of the next season. So I would say that you have to make a move with him. So Pat Brisson, his agent, will be checking with him all the time. Sid, do you want to stay? Do you want to go? What do you want? What do you need me to do? And we'll see. And we'll see if he wants to stay and end it in Pittsburgh, even though they're not going to be a playoff team.
But let's give Dan Muse a chance, and perhaps the club gets off to a good start and surprises a lot of us.
Let's hope so.